No, but I mean, if I say something funny and then you don't laugh for like 20 or 30 minutes, I assume that's just like the Discord built-in delay. Okay, what did you want to say, Hans? You had something on your mind?
Guys.
Yeah.
What the hell was this movie?
Okay, I can explain exactly what this movie was, actually.
But you can't check your six. It's kind of like, taking a screwdriver to a gunfight. What's happening? Just like on top.
Okay, except it's my turn to explain exactly what the hell this movie is.
Go for it. Tell us about it.
Okay, so I understand.
Wait, we have to introduce the show first. What show are our people listening to?
What? They shouldn't be listening to this. Hello. This is Steven C. et al.
Sure is.
I am Zach.
I am Aaron.
I'm Odds.
The premier Steven Seagal podcast.
The primo. This is the cream of the crop, sadly.
Creme de la creme. Discussing the dregs of the business. Today's dregs, attack force, and these dregs go deep.
They're particularly grainy and unpleasant.
Very grainy. These dregs got grit. You feel this grit in the mouthfeel, in the teeth.
Gets stuck in your teeth.
I will say, Attack Force potentially maybe formerly known as Harvester.
But they actually say the words attack force in this movie, which I don't think...
Hey, that could have been part of the reshooting and the dubbing that come afterwards.
Okay, so much. I understand. Listen, hear me out. Listen.
Yeah.
I understand what I'm about to say is like maybe the most hypocritical thing anybody has ever said on the planet. So do not be mean to me. Do not bully me for this. Because I know I am the worst at this. I am, let he who is with sin. I am the worst at this. So I understand this is not just the pot calling the kettle black. This is a very, 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 very black pot asking the kettle to not be black. But I will ask that for this one. I just plow through this description.
Okay, do it.
No interruption.
All right. I'm glad you gave that little forward, though, because I knew you absolutely would have said something.
I felt you. Of my skill to not talk.
I heard you putting the 6 chambers in and just ready to unload on me. Like I heard the round, lining up. I knew Hans was going to unload him in that, so I needed to put on my bulletproof vest of the mea culpa. But I promise I will do this very quickly. This will be like less than 3 minutes. But what I'm going to do, because it'll be quick, is I will run through the plot, and then I will very quickly run through what the plot could have been. Because this does not make, I think sometimes one of us just watches the movie and one of us kind of does the behind the scenes research. I'm assuming we all three here had to do the behind the scenes research on this one because
it's pretty critical.
You do not you still don't understand what's happening, but there is no chance of even grasping at straws without knowing the behind the scenes here.
Yeah.
So the events as depicted on screen in the released product of Attack Force, as it were, is that Steven Seagal playing, I think is a commander, Marshall Lawson. Starring strong, the best and the worst Steven Seagal character name so far. Literally, Marshall Lawson, 2 words that just mean law, is a commander of the elite military. Don't get into it too much. We don't know. It's just some super elite strike team. He is with the fellas, the boys. The boys say, we want to go to a, quote, T-bar. And the boys go to said T-bar. At the T-bar, the boys meet a woman, a sex worker of sorts, who they get permission to take her from her pimp, I believe, to take her back to their house, where I assume they plan to spend the night getting into very sin-free activities of watching Frasier reruns and discussing their favorite Bible verses. Unfortunately, she has other plans. She kills all 3 of them. Seagal aims to find out what happens. Of course, there are people just good people there doing their jobs of investigating this crime scene, and he yells at them for being the jerks they are trying to investigate this crime scene because it's his crime scene. They discover this woman is on a drug called CTX. There is a covert military drug called CTX that turns you into not an alien vampire, but very similar to what I guess an alien vampire would be like. It makes your eyes do weird things and you get superpowers, but it also makes you crazy. So the super secret drug CTX is behind all of this. Seagal and his friend and his girlfriend gear up and they take down the people who are making CTX. Before they're able to do that, the people who are making CTX or this gang of criminals decide to put it into the Paris water supply. This movie takes place in Paris, by the way, allegedly. This Paris looks a lot like Bucharest, Romania. But they say, we're going to put this in the water supply. And then at the end, Seagal and friends get to the hideout and they say, well, they put it in the water supply. They fight the bad guys there that are on the CTX, and they do not resolve the fact that this has made it into the water supply, and every single person in Paris is now on CTX. That is, they drive off, they have a fight, a very gory Blade-like fight, and they drive off into the night. And that is the end of the movie. It just ends. That is the plot as what we saw.
You got it.
Okay.
And as we've discussed, as all three of us have alluded or outright stated, the film was originally known as Harvester. It was a science fiction film where just, you know what? I don't even need to recap this other plot. Just Control F, replace all of the times I said like people on CTX with alien vampires. So they literally, as far as I can tell, they said this movie is either going to be gangsters are doing this drug, or it will potentially be a science fiction movie where alien vampires are like infiltrating, like Body Snatcher taking over Paris. The special effects very much still go towards the alien vampire angle. The very excellently ADR'd in lines and some apparent reshoots go the non-science fiction, the non-alien vampire angle, the drug angle. They literally said, not even me, not even joking, we'll figure it out in post. And I guess this is what happens when you figure it out in post. All right. Did I miss anything important? I will open the floor to general discussion and cross-examination. Thank you. I rest my case.
I have so much to say about this. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a lot to say about this too. Although I think we should. I'm going to pull a Zach here and use Zach's catchphrase. It's worth mentioning that in previous movies that we've seen, a lot of like we'll fix it in post, a lot of garbage around ADRing lines and just like completely picking the movie apart and putting the pieces back together in a different order so that it doesn't really make sense, but they had to work with what they had. Those were always because of Seagal's ego. It was always something about him that he like came on set and said, no, this isn't what we're making. We're making a completely different movie. Like, what was the one with the submarine? Submerged.
The one with the 15 minutes of the submarine?
Yeah, it was supposed to take place entirely on a submarine, and Seagal said, no, we're not doing that. We're doing something completely different, and we are on the submarine set for all of 15 minutes. This one, everything that I've read about this, everything that I've looked up, this is by far the most research I've done for any of these movies. And because it's fascinating. And this one...
you have to.
None of it, like Seagal was entirely on board with the alien vampire theme. And it was like decided... You do?
Yeah.
Because from what I can tell, it's decided after the fact that the people editing the movie were just like, nah, screw that. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to pull people in for reshoots. We're going to ADR over everything so that it's druggies and this drug that gives you superhuman powers. But they couldn't edit around the eyes, like blinking the wrong direction.
Good eye effects. Like those actually looked way too good for this movie.
Yeah, so it is interesting because it's a different sort of botched movie. Because it wasn't because of Seagal, but it still suffers from the same edit.
It is like the first time I disagree with the studio cut. I want the like Seagal cut of this movie.
Yeah,
the theory.
Yeah, and it's weird.
Please tell us this theory, Aaron.
Okay, so Attack Force came out in 2006.
That's not a theory. That's
Underworld.
That's a fact.
Underworld came out in 2003.
Have
you ever seen Underworld?
Yes.
I actually haven't.
Okay, go. Actually, it's like as a film, not great. Very fun to watch, though. I very much enjoy the Underworld films. They're fun. I have a theory. So this is not the first time that weird vampires have come up in a Steven Seagal movie. Like, what was the one? I believe it was, Today You Die. They get to like the final boss's lair and he's like into witchcraft and stuff. And there's like,
well, they just skipped over it completely. Right.
I think Steven Seagal saw Underworld and has been trying to make a vampire movie for years and just no one has let him.
We have seen that a lot of the trends in these movies, like it's a 2 or 3 year buffer before Seagal gets to make that movie that's copying.
Yeah,
so
he
obviously,
saw Underworld 3 years ago, and it's like, finally, I get to make Underworld.
Okay.
I don't think he saw it 3 years before. I think it came out. He waited 3 years, then found Underworld and was like, "Oh my god, this is amazing! We have to make one of these."
Can I put a slight little spin on your theory?
Go for it, please do.
The action film Blade, starring Wesley Snipes, came out in 1998.
1998.
Blade 2 came out in 2002,
Ooh.
and Blade Trinity came out in 2004.
Mm.
I think there is an and or of
Yeah.
Very well could
of
be.
these movies.
Yes.
Because while watching this, I did think finally somebody just made a worse Blade movie than Blade Trinity. Like this has, while I was
It has
watching,
better
this
eye
has
effects
the
than Blade
essence
Trinity had.
of- This has hints of Blade Trinity. What was that, Hans?
It has better eye effects than Blade Trinity did when Wesley Snipes wouldn't open his eyes for the one scene.
See, but like that's the type of thing you would expect from Seagal. You would
Yeah,
expect
it is.
like he literally was laying on a table and would not open his eyes, so they had to CG eyes opening onto him.
Yeah. If you're not
But weirdly enough,
dear listener, if you're not familiar with this, in Blade Trinity, Wesley Snipes was so egotistical that he was laying on his back on a table being filmed close up for this very specific scene where he's supposed to open his eyes, and he just refused to. So they had to CGI eyes on his face opening, and it is the dumbest thing in the world.
but that's the type of thing that should be in the Steven Seagal movie and isn't. Like, other than Seagal not doing any of his ADR, it looks like apparently Seagal and the director had issues.
What?
What a
that's
surprise.
Whoever heard of
Well,
that?
It even gets more specific than that. Apparently, Steven Seagal allegedly, potentially hinted towards wanting to stab the director of this film.
Oh my god.
Well, they did give him an Assassin's Creed Hidden Blade partway through the movie.
Oh my gosh.
It's not so hidden though.
They gave him more of a
Like a wrist blade.
like the Deus Ex blades, but they don't fold back into his arms.
Yeah.
Yeah, so all of the alien vampires have these Assassin's Creed wrist blade things.
No. They have
that-
clear plastic protractors that they kill
The
people
ones
with.
in the very
The vampires do.
beginning had the wrist blades, didn't they?
No, they have so in like the very opening scene, it's kind of unclear who these people are, but they do have like the Seagal hidden blades. But throughout most of the movie, the vampires have clear plastic knives
I guess they did.
that they use,
They're
which
so-
to me
so
just look
goofy,
like
though.
protractors.
They have weird like arm blades that I think there was something like it like syncs up with like your blood or your energy or something like that. Seagal
Yeah.
also, they give him a nice little set of arm blades. So maybe they should have called this movie like Blades or like Arm Blade or something.
Blades.
But apparently I do not know exactly. This is from the website manlymovie.net.
Oh,
They don't cite their sources, so-
Manlymovie.net.
manlymovie.net. They do not cite their sources, so this could be made up whole cloth for all we know.
Well,
Allegedly,
From what we've seen, the IMDb trivia section tends to be that way too. But
Right.
there are way too many accounts of what we're talking about
Right.
this movie for that to be the case on this one.
so this is the second time Steven Seagal has worked with director Michael Kush. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his last name. This is the second in the Seagal Kush trilogy. The previous week's movie and next week's movie, like all three in a row, were with the same director at them. I don't know how, based on this recollection. Apparently, Steven turned up before shooting with a copy of the film Predator 2 and said he wanted Attack Force to be like Predator 2. So now this little stew, this everything, bagel of a movie has Blade and Underworld and
Ooh.
Predator 2.
And it is also filmed at certain points like a slasher film.
Like slasher film, the poster
bit,
looks
yeah.
like The Matrix. This movie's a little of everything.
Like the first
Yeah.
group of guys that die, one of them one of them dies behind frosted glass, so you just see like blood splatter. And then the second guy dies when the lady like reaches her arms through a wall and like drags him through
Yeah.
the wall.
Like that scene of the three dudes dying is very slasher movie.
Yeah.
Talking about the poster though, his
Wait, hold on.
Okay,
I
all
still
right.
director has to get threatened to be stabbed, and then we'll talk about the poster.
Okay, yeah.
So apparently there's a scene where Seagal was saying he wanted to stab his opponent in the neck during this fight scene that was being filmed. I guess they had an argument on set, allegedly, where the director's like, no one's just going to stand there and like just wait for you to like, throw this knife and stab him in the neck. And Seagal said, you don't think it's possible? Why don't you stand there then and watch me throw it into your neck? Then you'll know it's possible.
That wasn't what the argument was about, Steven.
No. The director said, it started as a dream and became a nightmare. Towards the end, we wouldn't even look at each other. I would just say action and cuts. Apparently that happened, and then they filmed another movie together after this.
Okay.
But other than that, like, there's no one describes like literally having lawsuits pre-made for Seagal before he walks onto set knowing he's going to be trouble. No one describes him like extensively in reshoots. Like, he does not seem to be the main difficulty here. But yes, Hans, please tell us about this poster.
Well, it's the thing about it is that it's a Matrix style poster with the
Yes.
I can't even describe it because they're not like letters or numbers or symbols, but it's just like the falling digits in the background kind of, and then he's holding two guns that he doesn't actually use in the movie. And his face is such a manipulated, like it's like he looked in the 90s. It's when he was like really skinny and didn't have the creases in his forehead, but his hairline is very much there. But they edited his hairline so it doesn't have the crazy like unrealistic peak. Like, someone really went to town on his face in this picture to make the poster look good. It's very strange.
It's like maybe a plastic like Ken doll action figure of him would have looked in the 90s. With a chiseled, a sanded off like angled jaw.
Yeah. And he doesn't
his face looks like a cartoon character.
He doesn't look terrible. It does look a little bit like a cartoon character, right? It doesn't look terrible because it's how he looked in the 90s. But it's such like someone really worked hard on this one.
Hit this guy hard.
And it's very funny because every single poster for the past like 4 or 5 before this and every single one that's coming after this does not get that treatment. They're all just straight garbage.
No.
This is just garbage in its own unique way.
Yep, but this one was also produced by Sony Pictures.
Yeah.
Which confused me as soon as I saw that at the opening.
Oh, yeah. So the opening credits go on way too long somehow.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm pretty sure the music
the first
and like
2
the
minutes
blurred...
and 32 seconds. 2.5 minutes of just opening credits with a blurry background.
Which loops, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Yeah, it does, definitely.
It just loops.
I saw the same thing.
Which is like, so for our listeners, don't watch this movie. I'm not going to make you, even the first 2.5 minutes.
No,
But
because it's boring.
I'm pretty sure it's just like really blurred images of like gyrating women. And all the opening credits, which go on for 2.5 minutes.
Yeah.
And the audio and the visuals just loop.
And that's not like a long time, but just for literally a blurred beyond recognition. Like, this is not setting the mood. This is not kind of being in the headspace of the movie. It is default, like, stock video background, cranked up like Gaussian blur 500%, and then just the credits taking way too long to get through.
Yeah. Yeah, you see credits like that all the time, but it's overlaid over top of the opening of the movie, not...
Or like
nothing.
I felt like I was watching a movie from like the 60s when they used to do like almost all the credits before the movie actually begins. It just kept going.
Yeah.
It's terrible.
Why is it alien vampires? I don't think I've ever seen a movie about alien vampires.
I think this
it's
could have
always
just been
one or
vampires,
the
and it's
other.
fine.
It could have been. They
Could have
didn't.
been vampires,
And,
it could have been aliens.
I think that might have been a question answered by the original cut of this movie
A
before
couple-
they decided it should be about drug addicts.
Well, a couple
But-
people in this movie even get staked.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like a couple people die by just being impaled with a piece of wood.
Yep.
Not the alien vampires, weirdly. Other people.
No, they definitely they did the best they could to turn it around and make it about drug addicts, but the meat of that story, the original story, is definitely still in there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. Let's talk about the major players, because I think I need that explained to me. I don't understand that. One of my notes is that there's absolutely no clue as to who is with who is with not with who, and there are like 3 different agencies here.
Okay, let me help.
There's like Seagal and his people, and then the woman that he was working with and her people, and then there's like this government agency, and then there are the vampires.
Okay. I think I can help.
Please
I think
do.
I can help.
Please.
So at the very top, you have the admiral, and he's in charge of like it's apparently this whole thing is like a Navy operation. So part of
in the middle of Paris.
Okay.
That looks
In the middle of-
You
suspiciously
say
like
Paris.
Bucharest.
You say Paris, but I made a specific note of this because I thought it was very funny. When it showed, like, the little text comes up on the screen to show you where they are. It doesn't say Paris, France. It says France, Europe.
Does it really?
Yes.
As opposed to they say Paris when they talk about this will be put into like the Paris water supply. Like that's really, you don't see the Eiffel Tower. They don't even like see the
Except
Eiffel
they
Tower in the
also
background.
specifically say that the place that they're going to like find the main bad guy is near Bordeaux, which is a completely different region of France.
Imagine watching an action movie and there's like a transition shot of the New York skyline and the subtext is America, North America.
Like it's
The United States, North America.
Yeah, it's very, very silly. But anyway, so you have like the Admiral guy at the top. And one of the programs that the Admiral is overseeing is this division called Majestic. I don't know why it's called Majestic. But that's
I
kind
thought
of...
that was a person.
No, Majestic is the program.
Okay.
So in charge of Majestic, there are two people, Werner and Robinson. Totally interchangeable. I don't know why they were two characters. Could very easily have been one guy.
Got it.
Because that has two like co-directors of this program. And depending on the conversation, one of them outranks the other depending on what they're arguing about. And it makes no sense. But part of what Majestic was doing was they were developing like a drug to make super soldiers. And that was being worked on. That was what became CTX. And that was being worked on by Tia, who is like Steven Seagal's hot lady partner, and Arun, which was very weird for me to watch this movie and constantly hear that name, Arun. Except Arun went AWOL because he wanted to poison millions of people. I don't understand.
He wanted more test subjects. They wouldn't give him more test subjects, so he
Something like
decided
that.
to go get more.
I guess, but I don't know why he was trying to like poison an entire town with this drug. So Steven Seagal trained Tia, and so Seagal is on this other mission in France with Dwayne,
Right.
and three other guys who get killed in the opening of this movie.
Right. They're the best of the best, then they get destroyed instantly.
Yeah, the best of the best. And also at the very end of the movie, there is also Nobu, who is not mentioned at all
That's right.
until the very end of the movie. And then when both Dwayne and Nobu are mortally wounded, we have been with Dwayne this entire movie. Seagal leaves Dwayne to die and goes and saves Nobu, who we have never met,
roll
never
credits.
heard anything about. They get into a car, drive away, and roll
Best
credits.
good friend Nobu.
That's right.
If anything
Okay.
happened to Nobu,
So that actually helps a lot. Now, the only other thing I'm missing here, because there's the two, Robinson and Werner, and they oversee this
The Majestic
organization
program.
of people. Right.
Yeah.
Why are they out to kill Seagal and his team
That
in the
is
middle of the movie, and then they team up?
So I think here's my guess. This doesn't make a whole lot of sense, but this is just me trying to put the pieces
Speculation.
together. I think there are like some throwaway lines between Werner and Robinson about like, we can't let this get out. Like, we have to make sure, because they're trying to like do all this stuff while not alerting the Admiral, who's like their boss, but who finds out about the whole thing anyway. And so I think there was like a scene cut where they talk, or never filmed because they had to remake this movie in post,
probably more than one.
where they discuss we can't let Marshall, that is Seagal, do like put a stop to this program. We can't dig too deep because then he would know. Seagal doesn't actually know about this program until the end of the movie, where he magically knows exactly how to look for symptoms of CTX addiction and how to fight these vampires and whatever. He just shows up. He has never heard of this drug before. He just teaches everybody how the drug works, even though there is no scene where he even hears about it.
Right.
So I think they're thinking we can't let him investigate the death of his guys, because then he would expose us for letting Arun go AWOL. And so we need to put a kibosh to all this. Because at the beginning of the movie, they're not trying to kill him. They're just following him.
Right.
They're just like sending agents to follow him. And in the very opening action scene of the movie, Marshall this is never mentioned again, but Marshall puts a stop to some sort of attack where the vampires were trying to steal some sort of MacGuffin, which I thought was going to be important throughout the movie. It was not, but it had something to do with CTX production. And so he calls Werner and Robinson and says, "Hey, what is this thing?" And they say, "Don't worry about it. It's not your job to worry about that." Okay. And so Seagal just kind of goes, "Oh, okay, I guess," and then goes off to France with his guys who die. That's what I think is supposed to be happening.
I'm really glad that you caught all of that, because I obviously didn't.
It took concerted force of will to just like lock in while I was watching this and try to figure out what was going on.
Because I was watching this movie, and then all of a sudden, sorry, Zach, but just 1 second. Like I was watching this movie, and then all of a sudden, this guy who, at least so far, had no like qualms, I guess, with Steven Seagal, because he has his own, he's doing his own thing, separate mission. He's looking into why his guys died. Yeah. They're all against this guy who's trying to poison the entirety of Paris. And then for seemingly no reason, he sends a huge attack force against him.
Yeah.
And they have to barricade themselves in this safe house, which Tia asks him, like, "Are you sure this is safe?" And he says, "Yeah, of course it's safe. I made it myself, didn't I?" And then in the next scene, guys break through the doors and start shooting everybody. Later. Yeah. And then after that, of course, they win. They kill all the guys that came to get them. And so the guys that set them were like, "Yeah, okay, I guess we can team up now." What was the point of that?
Oh, yeah.
Why do it?
And everyone, except for Seagal, the Admiral, and Nobu die. Everyone.
Yeah.
Including like literally all of Paris, because they're all in CTX now.
They shoot like
but
multiple
we're just gonna gloss
ladies.
over that.
It is a literal megadeath. Okay, now that all makes sense what you said, and that helps a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Now let me just put a quick or.
Okay.
Aliens arrive on Earth to harvest human DNA, and the special agent is assigned to destroy them without letting the public know they exist.
Yes.
Big or. Huge or.
You could row a ship with this oar.
You could row the mightiest galleon with this oar. But that's what happened.
Right.
Well, so there is a weird twist in here, because there's a major character we have not mentioned, and that is the Vampire Queen.
Yeah, well, to be fair, the movie doesn't really mention her either.
The final boss fight of this movie is with a Vampire Queen who, up to this point, had like 2 lines and is never mentioned. Like I only know she's like the queen because in the IMDb credits she is credited as Queen. No one ever mentions her. No one talks about her.
She's introduced to die.
No one names her. She has one scene with Arun saying like, "Are we gonna get Tia on our side to help us, poison all these thousands of people?" And Arun's like, "I'm not sure." And then the scene ends. Like that's all she says. And then she gets the final fight with Seagal, at the beginning of which she tries to like convince him to join her side, like, revenge cuts both ways, you should join me. And without Seagal saying anything, she says, "Well, I guess you won't," and then they fight. Like there isn't even a conversation.
And apparently earlier, like when they were starting up production, she was listed as Alien Queen.
Well,
so they could have just given her, like when they had to change it anyway. They could have just given her a name, but they put her in credits as Queen.
Yeah.
But allegedly she was to be the Alien Queen.
Yeah.
The vampire Alien Queen.
Well, that would make sense with all the vampire aliens running around.
Let's talk about...
Somehow, actually, I do have to agree with you. Somehow the vampire alien does make more sense. Crazy. Right?
It does.
Like, as a story, it would make more sense.
Yeah. The whole movie would make more sense if they decided to just go that route. I don't... So... You said it the best, Zach. I want the Seagal cut. This is the first time I've ever wanted the version of the movie before it was edited to hell.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing that I was thinking. There was one movie. Okay, there were 2 movies that I was thinking about throughout this whole thing. The first one I already mentioned, Underworld. I'm not as familiar with Blade as I am with Underworld, so a lot of this was striking me as Underworld. You recognize what you know, right? The other movie I was thinking about, have y'all seen Troll 2?
No.
Like
Hans and I were just talking about this.
one of the worst
on my
movies ever
list.
made. I highly
I
recommend
made
you
Hans
see
watch
Troll
The
2.
Room over the weekend, so we were then talking about Troll 2 a good bit. I did. So Hans has not seen Troll 2, but Hans has seen, oh my god, they're eating her, and then they're gonna eat me. Oh my god. He has seen
It's
that.
glorious.
Yeah.
I showed
Troll
him that.
2 is a movie that is so bad, it's gloriously bad. It's one of like the quintessential so bad it's good movies. I highly recommend you see it. But there's a very specific reason it's so bad. So watching Attack Force, I was watching this movie and I thought, nothing that anyone is saying has anything to do with what anyone said before or after it. Like, it's just words happening at each other, and which is especially confusing because most of the lines are delivered ADR. So like they had a chance in a recording studio
We haven't talked
to
about that
shift
yet.
the dialogue to make it make more sense, and they chose not to. So one of the reasons that Troll 2 is so bad, it was made by the writer and director of the film, Claudio Fragasso, is Italian, but he had this dream of making an American slasher film, like a teenage horror movie. And so he comes to the United States, like somewhere in, I think, Ohio, and just like puts out posters in town saying, hey, come be part of this movie production. And so it's like the town dentist is the star of this movie. Like,
Wait, really?
yes, zero acting
respect.
experience, never intended to be like, and it's just like they got one of the characters, one of like the more famous characters, was literally a patient at the local mental hospital.
Oh, wow.
Who they just like said, hey, would you want to be in this movie? He's like, yeah, and filmed his entire scene in like an hour. Like, it's very strange. But the script that was handed to them, the director and writer of this movie wanted to make like an American teenage horror film. He does not speak English. No one on the crew spoke
really?
English. He brought his own crew from Italy to film this movie.
Really?
No one spoke English.
Respect.
And so the script was handed to the actors in like this horribly broken English, one scene at a time. So like he would hand them the script for the scene they were about to film. They would read it and then they would film the scene. He'd say, okay, next scene. And whenever they argued with him about like, hey, this line doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, I would say it this way. He would force them to say it the way that he wrote it. And so watching Attack Force, I was just constantly reminded of Troll 2 because I'm thinking someone made this movie with like a vague idea of what an action horror slasher kind of movie is, but without really understanding how any of the parts work together. And if anyone argued with them about how it should be done, they got angry and forced them to read it as it was written, because nothing anyone says throughout the entire movie, like no individual line, is connected to the line before it or the line after it. It is just words happening. It's amazing.
That's a really good way of putting it.
It's amazing.
Also, that's a really good thing to know going into watching Troll 2 whenever I get to it.
Troll 2 is one of my all-time favorite movies to watch. It is not good. It's not. I'm not going to say it's like my favorite movie. It is not even close. But I love to just sit down with some friends and a couple of beers and watch Troll 2 because it is fascinating to me.
Okay, and weirdly similar, you mentioned this, feeling a lot like Troll 2.
Yeah.
Even more so than that, I think it is worth pointing out, Troll 2 does not feature any trolls.
No, none. Not a single troll.
Troll 2 features goblins.
Yes.
Is that
yes,
correct?
They are goblins.
Really?
So
Vegan
I think to make it
goblins.
even more similar, just imagine that like the only way it could be more similar to this movie is if like they shot a movie about like trolls and then like decided halfway through and had to overdub characters with and like remove all mentions of troll, because that's what happened with the alien vampires. Like notably, we had a Troll 2 without any trolls in it, and then we had an alien vampire movie that took out the alien vampires.
Yes. Yeah.
Like these movies share so much of the same DNA.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah. God, that's weird.
Yeah. It's
okay, but like Hans
This
said,
movie.
we gotta talk about the ADR.
we have to talk about the ADR.
Yeah, we have
It
to talk
is-
about the ADR.
There has been
I
ADR in
understand.
previous movies. It was rough.
It's the worst
here.
in this one.
This is the worst.
By far, it's the worst. And it's
I
not
understand,
even
dear
the
listener.
worst. Oh, go ahead, Zach.
I was gonna say, if you have listened to every episode of our podcast so far, it will sound like we are just absolutely beating like the deadest horse imaginable when we say, "Oh, the ADR is so bad this time. The ADR is so bad this time." I swear, this is the worst so far. You may not believe me. Before we've talked about how like the person ADRing for Seagal like doesn't sound like Seagal. Like they don't even necessarily sound like something. They just sound like the absence of Seagal. I kept seeing people online make comparisons to Martin Sheen, that whoever's ADRing Seagal like sounds like Martin Sheen.
Yeah.
When I would hear it, I get that. I get what they're saying. I was picturing like a real like a sarsaparilla swiller, like a real howdy partner. You must be careful around these parts. It's real rough and tumble out here.
Yeah, they got like a much
right.
more kind of gravelly,
Rough.
husky voice.
Western.
Sounds like an older
talked about the
gentleman.
ADR being bad before.
Yeah.
This is a different man delivering Seagal's lines.
Yeah.
Not even, we've talked before, this guy isn't even trying to sound like Seagal. This guy is specifically trying to sound like a prospector who's like wearing the onesie pajamas and like panning for gold. It is absurd. I cannot get over it.
It's real
Yeah.
rough.
And a lot of it is because they had to get someone like quick, I guess, to come in and ADR over because they had to tweak the script so that it wasn't about alien vampires. But
And
like you
whoever
said,
they
Aaron,
had poorly doing a Seagal impression for the last like 10 movies was not available.
I guess.
Just sarsaparilla Sam.
Well,
He was the only one in the studio.
I guess,
funny
but like
because
Aaron said,
I
they
think
don't. They
often
had the
whoever
opportunity
did
to.
the ADR for Seagal's voice was not credited, but I feel like it was the same person because over the last few movies, I could hear them getting slowly better at impersonating Seagal,
A little bit.
and here it's just a different guy. There's no connective tissue at all.
They got like a voice actor from like a Wild West like cartoon, like the next studio over, or like they got a Martin Sheen impersonator and said, "Can you do Seagal?" And he said no, and they said, "All right, get in there."
Mm-hmm.
Honest to God, I don't think they got anybody. I think they had all of the. It says in the IMDb facts. What is it? They called back a few of the lower paid actors for reshoots, redubbed the majority of Seagal's dialogue ADR, totally re-edited the film, and changed it into Attack Force as it is now known. I have a feeling they didn't call in anybody. They made the decision. They called in the people they could call in, and they said, "Oh, we need to get somebody. You over there in the chair. You're gonna do Seagal."
I always thought Bill had a
It's
good
like a dude
voice.
just smoking a cigarette at a
Yeah,
skateboard.
yeah.
Yeah. Like
But
the
like Aaron
inflection
said,
makes
they
no
had-
sense. Nothing makes sense here.
But like Aaron said, they had the opportunity because of that to change the dialogue to make sense with the new theme of the movie, and they just didn't.
Yeah.
I think they just like control F, all CTX, like aliens with CTX, and change nothing else.
Which, like, okay. In the original script, were the aliens pushing drugs and posing as pimps?
So that's the next thing I want to talk about, because the next thing that I think is critical here, the poisoning of the Paris water supply.
No.
That
What
was-
poisoning of the Paris water supply? What are you talking about?
That was so like integral to the film that I cannot believe that portion of it, or at least some form of that, was injected in after the fact. How is poisoning the water supply going to turn people into vampire aliens?
Well, what? So, what is Arun's plan here? Why? Like, it's never explained.
Plan.
And he does say in their little like makeshift lab with the beakers and test tubes, so they're doing science.
Yeah.
He says he just wants more test subjects. That's it.
So you're just gonna like dump it on random people and not be able to gather any data? That's what?
Yeah, that's science, baby. That's how it's done.
Throw crap
I
at the wall
also-
and see what sticks.
It's okay. Now Hans, I'm very self-conscious about this. Thank you. It's worth pointing out. Go fuck yourself, Hans. It's worth pointing out that like
Oh my!
that in a movie like Batman Begins, the Scarecrow like puts his fear gas into the water, but then he needs to like turn it into a mist or whatever to make it affect Gotham, and they actually like show him taking steps to make that happen.
Yeah.
When we talk about like the poisoning the Paris water supply plot in this movie, it is like one scene where a guy says like, as mentioned, I want more test subjects. Let's poison the water supply. And they say, all right, there's a guy calling saying, okay, everyone will be poisoned like by midnight tonight or something. And then there's like at the end when Seagal and crew are coming into their lair, they look at a laptop screen and they say like, oh, they poisoned the water supply. That's the extent of it. You don't see this like taking effect. You don't see poison being put into the. You don't see the CTX being
like
put into the water supply. They talk about putting it in,
village.
and they talk about it being in. That is how this is represented on screen.
But the thing that I don't understand, there was a scene about halfway through the movie where the what's his name, Werner, and what's the other guy, Robinson. They're
Werner
talking
Robinson
about
sounds like a law firm or something.
It does. Internet work. Call Werner and Robinson.
Have you been poisoned by alien vampires?
So they're talking about it, and they say, "Oh, it's they've detected." Someone comes to them and says they've detected trace amounts of CTX in the water supply. And I remember thinking about this, like, wait, why did they say that? They just said they haven't done it yet. How are there traces in the water supply? And then at the end of the movie, they release it into the water supply, and it's like, well, but that didn't.
Well, there was a scene,
happen.
like maybe an hour in, where Tia says 15,000 people will be infected by CTX in 12 hours. We need to put a stop to this. What?
Yeah.
What?
What?
Huh?
It was ridiculous. So then by the end of the movie, they're going into this village that Seagal and his attack force, they're all lined up in all their special vehicles or whatever. And they just start breaking into random houses.
Yeah.
To like see if people are on this drug because they drank the water. And if they are, they just kill them.
Yeah.
They just start breaking into people's homes and like forcing flashlights in their eyes and like grabbing their faces and pulling their eyelids up to see if their eyes make the weird blinking.
Yeah, it's like
thing.
a young couple eating dinner, an old lady praying her rosary. Like, it's just...
And if they see their eyes blinking the wrong way, they just shoot them.
Yep.
What?
Have you been unfairly persecuted because you've been exposed to the drug CTX? You
Against
may be entitled
your will?
to cash settlements.
Right?
Have you been gunned down by the military because someone put CTX in your water? You could be entitled to cash settlement if you're still alive.
I have in my notes breaking and entering and killing random people who were accidentally on the drug because it was in their water supply. Why? Well, like, how was that even written?
They are not the help out and do a good job saving people force. They are the attack force. If you're holding a hammer, every problem's a nail. If you're the attack force, what do you think your solution to any problem is, Hans?
Well, like Seagal makes a big deal out of throughout the whole movie, he's talking about I need to get my armory here. You know the kinds of guns that I like. When he doesn't use a gun,
that's the
he
exact
actually uses
line
arm
he says.
blades. But whatever. Yeah.
Blades Trinity.
Uses his Assassin's Creed hidden blades.
Yeah, Aaron, don't watch Blade 1 or 2 to try to understand this, to try to get the connection in this movie. You just have to watch Blade Trinity.
Okay, got it.
This is Blade Trinity, the sequel. Blade Trinity 2, Attack Force. :
Just colon, end of title.
End of title.
Yeah. We'll figure out the rest of the title in post.
Yeah, I just have a couple more notes about this.
Cool. Yeah.
Let's hear it.
So the final fight with the queen alien vampire, who wasn't an alien vampire, who, like I already said, is not mentioned at all. In the fight, I was actually surprised. One thing this movie did do, which was brave, that previous Seagal movies have not done. Seagal takes a couple hits. You don't see him bleed.
He does.
Or like show any visible injuries or anything, but he does take a couple hits. The queen does get a couple hits on him, but also he does cut her shirt open because of course he does.
Of course.
Although it seemed like practical effects they did there for her chest wound were surprisingly
Yeah.
good. There were some disparate good elements of this final fight.
Yeah.
That were stitched together as a part of this terrible movie.
It took place in
with
an interesting,
awful, headache-inducing, weird white flashes.
Well, yeah, I don't know why those
every
were
attack.
included. Maybe it was just to hide the wires that were dragging everybody around. But it did take place in an interesting place. They were in the rundown basement of this church or something. They said it was a church. It does not. It's not a church.
No.
That's not what a church looks like.
I mean, what do you know
But
about
there were
There was a dead priest there for some reason. That was never explained. That had to have been because he was trying to fight the vampires or something. Because in a vampire movie, you need a priest to come by, right? But it
Right.
wasn't a vampire movie,
have
but they
the
kept the
cross and
priest
stake.
for some reason.
There were a lot of brick walls to throw people through.
A lot of brick walls through which you could throw people. A lot of people get thrown through
So many
walls.
brick walls in Bucharest, Paris.
Yeah.
Tia gets thrown
was
through
the other
two
guy?
walls in one throw, and she just kind of stands back up. I definitely thought if this movie were a lot cooler than it is, Tia would be a secret vampire the whole time, but she wasn't.
Yeah. Having been one of the ones that invented the drug.
Yeah.
The vampire drug.
One of the first test subjects.
Yeah. Oh, I took it myself, and that's how I can fight the vampires. No, she just gets her throat cut at the very beginning of this, siege of the big church.
Dang, that would have been a cool idea.
Dang, script doctor.
Well-
Just offhandedly fixing movies like with side comments.
I'm a professional. Not a professional.
The
no one
script
pays me for
doctor
this.
is doing house calls.
Who was the other guy in this scene? The one that was introduced in this scene and was the only one that survived aside from Seagal? I
Nobu.
can't remember his name. Nobu, yeah. As is becoming the norm, Seagal fights the big bad, has like a one-on-one melee,
Yeah.
while his partner, the other guy, takes on everybody else and kills them all.
Yeah.
And that was a combination of Nobu and the guy that has been with him the whole time.
And they
who
both
died, but
honestly
still.
come out looking way cooler than Seagal. I don't know.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, that's not too hard.
But just like this is supposed to be a Seagal movie, and his partners do more.
Okay, this was also supposed to be an alien vampire movie, so it doesn't matter what something's supposed to be. That factors in very little into what it is.
This is true. You're very right.
Oh, man.
Sorry for raising my voice.
Nobu does get saved at the end of this movie. Nobody else
It's the only one.
who was with us the entire time. I think Nobu has like one line, and it's maybe 3 words. But he lives. Everybody else dies. He gets to ride off
Probably
into the
the best character
sunset
in this
with
entire movie.
Seagal. But everybody else dies. Almost literally everybody else. Warner dies. Robinson dies. The Admiral doesn't die because he's not on the operation. But everybody else is dead.
He's out at sea.
Yeah.
Yeah, off the coastline of Paris.
It wasn't even a bad movie in that it was, because it was a bad movie, and it was a bad movie because it was bad, and it was a bad movie because it was supposed to be about something and ended up being not about that thing. But it was also a bad movie because every part that we haven't talked about, like we've covered maybe 25 minutes of movie spread out across an hour and 35 minutes.
Yeah.
The rest is just boring. It's
very
all
boring.
garbage filler for nothing. Like
Nothing
it's
happens
all
for most of this
nothing.
movie.
Very, very boring.
People talk. People don't have conversations. People just talk.
There's
Yeah.
there's
at
like
least
there's
an hour
one
of the movie.
scene, it's like long and protracted, where like the first lady vampire who kills like the 3 guys on Seagal's team, she's like out in the park at night with some guy who is like her next victim, and that's what it's gonna be, and they're like making out in this park for like a long time, and there's like a third guy who's just like watching, and she ends up killing them both by like teleporting around, and it is a snore
Next.
fest. It's amazing how boring they made a teleporting alien vampire
Yeah.
killing 2 guys in the middle of the
Teleporting
night.
alien vampire prostitute.
Like it's amazing how boring they made that. Also, so this is there's been like talk a lot, at least as I've heard it, in the like film criticism space, or like really movie production criticism space right now, about intimacy coordinators and things like that. Like there was that whole hoopla about the Lord of the Rings Amazon show getting an intimacy coordinator, and was like, you don't need one. This movie really needed an intimacy coordinator because like none of the supposedly romantic stuff made any sense. It was just very uncomfortable. No one.
It wasn't
wasn't good.
romantic.
It was not romantic.
It was
at
like,
all.
oh, here's where there should be here's where these 2 characters should kiss, so they just do it.
Yeah,
And it
it's-
doesn't really track.
doesn't make any sense.
So,
It wasn't filmed well.
Like an intimacy coordinator is typically to make sure that like everybody on set is like comfortable
Yeah.
and like nothing bad is happening to the real like people making
Yeah.
the movie. they didn't even I mean, I'm sure they probably needed that too. They needed like an intimacy like coherence coordinator or something, like an intimacy like fact checker, actually.
Yeah, it was not fun to watch for many reasons.
No.
Oh, and that kind of sucks because this, honestly, if it weren't incredibly dull and very frustrating to watch, this would be one of the few that I could actually recommend to people.
Yeah, it's like so
that
close.
enjoy what we're doing. It's really close because the concept is hysterical. An alien vampire movie that had the aliens and vampires removed during editing, and then all of Seagal's lines ADR'd over.
It should be fun.
It should have been hysterical, not for the right reasons, but still. And it missed the mark because the rest of the movie is so dull.
The Seagal movies dance so close to the edge of the precipice, and it can just be one or two things. It can be so easy, whether they, enjoy that beautiful cliffside sunset or they go plummeting off to their death. This movie goes over the edge and plummets, in my opinion. Do not watch it.
Yeah, don't waste your time. The few good moments are not worth all the boredom in between.
We are talking about Submerged, and I still don't think quite taking the lowest spot from Ticker, but we are talking like Submerged and Ticker territory.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Which now that we're at a third one, we had one that like literally they weren't able to finish shooting, and now we had two that like they were able to shoot but like changed what the movie was halfway through the movie
on a fundamental level.
I'm noticing we've talked about our like scale being completely thrown off here on this, like not on the 1 to 10 scale, but on like the 1 to 5 out of 10 scale that the Seagal movies fit into. That like in order to be on that lower end, to be one of the worst ones, it has to have something that literally like makes the movie not a movie. Like if the movie just exists as a movie, it will not be good, but it will be on like the mid to higher end of this ranked list. In order to be down as low as like this one, like if you look at the bottom 3 movies when we're like ranking these, at least for me, like it is the movies that are not complete movies. Like this class is graded on such a curve. If you turn in a paper that meets like the page requirements, you will pass. You need to like have copy pasted literally half the paper from like Wikipedia to fail, and that is essentially.
Does it have a beginning, middle, and end? Okay, we're good.
You pass.
Done.
Like
does it hit an hour and 30 minutes?
Rubber stamp.
We're done. All you need.
These ones, like when they're stitched together with like half footage from other movies, or when like they remove like the not just like plot points, but like the plot during post-production, that is what you have to do to be the bottom of a Seagal movie ranked list.
Yeah.
This is probably above, definitely above Ticker, maybe above Submerged for me. It could kind of depend, but it's in that bottom
it's
three.
Above Submerged for me. Not by a whole lot.
It's a half star though.
Yeah,
just because I don't think Submerged was this fun to think about.
No, I was really excited to talk to you guys about this one. Submerged, I just had a bad time through and through.
I gotta be honest, I was not excited to talk about the last couple of Seagal movies. This one, I was very much looking forward to talk about it.
Yeah.
No, I gave Hans a lift earlier today to like get his car inspected, and we were like struggling. We had to like restrain ourselves to like not talk about this movie in the car. I'm just like, any other, what do you want to, Mission Impossible? Yeah, that's a movie, right? Like, we had to talk about anything else other than this movie because we just wanted to talk about this.
Typically, when any of the three of us really, and anytime
like
any of the three of us are hanging out,
like handcuffing ourselves to not be allowed to.
Yeah. Typically, anytime any of the three of us are hanging out, anytime I go over to your house, Zach, or anything, we never like struggle for conversation. No. We can just talk.
Yes.
We can just talk for hours and hours and hours, and it's never an issue because there's always something dumb that we can talk about. This was one of the first times Zach and I were sitting in the car, and we like It had to come up at some point that I was in at the time that he picked me up. I was, I think, 3/4 of the way through the movie, and I had to finish it when I got back here.
You hadn't even met the Queen yet,
and I mentioned that, and then the car just went silent, and we were like, "Oh God, we got to talk about something else because we can't talk about this until we start recording."
Yes.
Oof.
Yeah. So no, the movie that was supposed to be the alien vampire harvester movie that became the gang drugging Paris movie is more entertaining to talk about than the movie that was supposed to be The Thing meets Hunt for Red October, which just became the Bad Boys 2 knockoff. Like,
Yeah.
I will agree with that.
Which,
Oh man.
Man, what a time. Also, I'm in a much better like state while talking about this movie, both mentally and geographically.
Well,
Both
was
just-
submerged when you were in Connecticut.
Yes, I was in a much worse state.
that's
I was
right.
in many worse states, literally and figuratively, while talking about submerged. Much better mood. Pennsylvania wins. I'm sorry. My hatred of Connecticut knows no bounds.
that's really specific, but okay.
I can't wait till we get our first Connecticut listener and I start getting hate mail.
Means you've really made it once
Sorry,
you start
your
getting
state
hate mail.
sucks. It's not my fault.
Honestly, we're at the end of my notes. Either of you have anything else?
I'm good on notes.
I tried to find someone who went on and did something else. The guy who played Dwayne was actually in a few things before this. Like he was in The Fifth Element. He was a background character in The Fifth Element.
Really?
Yeah. Like there's just he's been in a whole bunch of movies. And he's still making stuff. So like Seagal's partner in this, he's still making movies. The guy who played Arun looked vaguely familiar to me, and I could not tell you why.
The entire time I was thinking, man, this guy's really trying to be David Tennant.
I
I can see that. Both of the past two guys you mentioned were both in the show EastEnders.
Oh.
Interestingly enough,
Oh.
on the BBC soap opera.
interesting.
This guy actually does a lot of Adam Crosdell,
Mhm.
who is Arun. He actually does a lot of voice work. He was in the video game
Yeah.
Middle Earth: Shadow of Mordor,
Oh.
Final Fantasy 15.
That's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, he's got some fun credits.
Yeah. So I mean, a lot of the people I looked at, a lot of the actors who are in this seem to be doing all right. A lot of the actors in here don't even have pictures for their IMDb pages.
We're getting into that territory.
Yeah.
Huh? I guess then when we get to that point, it's more, it's less the search for hope. It's less the search for trying to see if they did better things after the Seagal movie, and more the hope of Seagal didn't turn them off from acting altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, honestly.
So here's an interesting question. I'm looking through the IMDb credits here.
Mhm.
I cannot find Nobu on here.
I
Really?
was looking. I cannot find him either. You were saying Nobu, and I was like, believing you that he was in this movie. IMDb and Wikipedia do not acknowledge this man's
The
existence.
subtitles call him Nobu. I watched this one with the subtitles on. I don't like watching movies with subtitles unless it's in a foreign language. Then it's fine. I just get over it.
Ooh.
But if it's in if it's in English, I prefer to watch it without subtitles. I turned the subtitles on immediately
subtitles.
because I knew I wasn't going to be able to understand anything. The sound mixing in this movie, I'm very sorry to whoever did the sound, is terrible. Foley is terrible. Like footsteps are some of the loudest things in this movie. They have flip phones, which make like a crunching sound when they close. It is
Okay, although I
some
will
weird
I do need to
choices.
say, typically what I expect to be, a very honest profession, good, honest work. But in this case, like the absolute hardest working people in the show business, ADR and Foley re-recording mixer in the credits is Ted Swanscott, and ADR studio assistant is Nick Foley. First of all, I'm very, very upset that Nick Foley does ADR instead of doing Foley work. I'm sorry, Nick. You missed the ball there.
I think he specifically chose not to do Foley at some point in his career.
He had to. He's like, I want it. Well, it does seem fun, but I can't. I'm going to get too many comments, so I'm going to do ADR. Those two are the hardest working people in the entire cast and crew of this movie.
Yeah,
They
absolutely.
made the movie.
Yeah. Just throughout the movie, sound was really weird for me. I'm sorry to all the people who worked on this. I know it was an uphill battle. I know.
Mhm.
You did the best you could. But I do not, if you didn't give it your A game, I don't blame you. But it seems that most of the people who continued to act, like chose to continue acting, are doing okay. That's what I have found in my research.
That's good.
Nobody hit
I
the
mean,
big times or anything.
I will
but-
say somebody else who will go on to do notable, biggest air quotes possible things, the director, as previously discussed, Michael Kush, did Shadow Man right before this, And then after this, we'll do Flight of Fury. So we will discuss him again, at the very least, if that counts as being notable. He also directed a movie. I've not seen this. He directed a movie called Samurai Cowboy in 1994. Amazing. Title alone. Wait. A Japanese man who always wanted to be a cowboy arrives in Montana and teams up with an African-American singer, a bully Native American, a cute veterinarian, and an old cowboy.
Okay, thank
ranch.
goodness that
Yes,
is the exact
please.
opposite of what I thought it was going to be.
You know,
that sounds exactly like the kind of movie that I would want to watch.
If that is on the menu, I am ordering that, and I am tipping well.
Hey,
Thank you.
yeah, so movies you should watch instead. Maybe Samurai Cowboy? I'm not sure. Give it a try. Let me know. Definitely.
Movies you should watch instead. I am claiming Blade 1 through Trinity.
I am claiming Underworld and Troll 2. What do you got, Hans?
You're gonna put me on the spot, huh?
wait.
This
is part of
never
the
think
show.
Of these
On the
ahead of
spot
time.
third.
I know, and I always forget about
In
it.
the segment we do every time.
I know. What have I watched recently?
I love that Hans' suggestion is always a wild card. It's not like, oh, it's this thing from the movie, but better. It's just like, man, I like this. You should go watch it.
Sometimes it is.
Okay, I just re-listened to one of our previous episodes where you recommended Clerks, the animated series. So
I did do that. No, so I'm looking back at my history, and the only thing I've watched aside from Steven Seagal movies since last week was The Room, and I can't, in good conscience, recommend
didn't you watch the first
Room.
Mission Impossible?
Oh, I did watch First Mission
Ooh,
Impossible.
Yeah.
Because I was trying to see if there were any gaps in anything I was missing from the latest one that we watched. Not really important. Anyway, I don't know. God,
by the
man,
time
you could go watch Anchorman.
By the time we
Anchorman's a
record
pretty
the
funny
next
movie.
episode, Barbenheimer will have happened. So
Barbenheimer will have happened.
you can go either see Barbie or Oppenheimer.
So those of you living in the future listening to this episode, I hope you survive Barbenheimer.
Although by the time this episode comes out, I don't think they'll even be in theaters anymore. But yeah.
Quotes. Do any of you have?
I do have
any
one
quotes?
quote.
Yeah.
It's from the very beginning of the
couple.
movie. When Seagal is like toasting the three guys who are going to die later. He says, "Here's to what could be a real good team."
Now, was that an
The team
ADR
that
line,
then
or
gets
was that a
I
Seagal
think
line?
that was delivered by Seagal himself. Here's to what could be a real good team.
He probably said it really fast, too.
Yeah, oh, he definitely just, his demeanor, he did not care about this.
You know how like
Every line is delivered exactly the same as every other line.
You know, like how when you're a
No
kid,
emotion.
like you don't so much run as you just like straight up are falling, and your feet are just like keeping you like catching you from completely falling. Sometimes that is how Seagal like delivers a line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just going. You can't stop it.
It has to happen. It's got to be over as fast as possible.
The pace is completely off, and it's gonna like go crashing into a wall or the ground or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. And we're only gonna get more of that as time goes
Oh.
on. Zach, what do you have?
I have two.
Oh.
I have right after his boys are killed by
Oh wait, is this gonna be the same
Vampire
line as
lady?
me?
when this is probably like not the first time you notice that it's 80 yard, but one of the like worst examples of it being 80 yard, because this is not a Skull line. This is very clearly an 80 yard line when, you know, Sarsaparilla Sam says, "Dwayne, find that bar."
Oh.
That's a good one. That's not mine though. Mine is actually delivered by him. They're walking through the hotel room where his boys were slaughtered, and there is just blood. There was blood that leaked out from under the door into the hallway.
Oh, the way
of
he
the
opens
hotel.
the door.
Oh, he opens the door into a body and then just like shoves it like 5 or 6 times against the body to get it out of the way so he can get in the door. It's awful, so awful. But there's a massacre in this room. The entirety of 3, like, how do I say this? Every drop of blood that was inside these 3 men is now outside of these 3 men. Just a complete slaughter in this hotel room. And his what's his name? His
Dwayne.
partner? Dwayne walks up and like tries to check the pulse of one of the guys. And after like a solid 5 seconds of the camera panning around the room of this this massacre. Seagal says, "Nah, don't bother. They're all dead."
I'll do like that one.
And then I had one more.
Oh,
There, it's Tia talking to Seagal, and she says, "I'm afraid Werner and Robinson will let this happen," which is I guess the drugs going into the Paris water supply. I'm worried they're gonna let this happen and make us scapegoats. I had to go back. I had to rewind it and listen to it again to confirm that she does in fact say scapegoats.
They literally dubbed over half the lines in this movie, and they couldn't fix that one. They couldn't do her a solid and just get rid of that first syllable.
Yeah,
they did her so dirty.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, see, I know. We have parts of this podcast. I know there's some stuff that I prepare for.
Good.
I'm kind of surprised you didn't say this one, Hans. I thought you would find this one funny. The other quote that I really liked was when he's talking over the phone with, I believe, I'm sorry if you can hear Billy barking in the background. He's talking to the phone with like the guy who tries to kill him and then like ends up working with him, and he says, "I'll send you an encryption with the gory details." I'll send you an encryption.
An encryption.
That one made me laugh.
One single.
We don't have a full on like hacking, sharpen up the image.
Yeah.
But I'll send you an encryption with the gory details is the funny, like, getting computers very wrong quote of this movie for me.
What movie did I recommend last time?
I could not.
I can't even tell you what movie we talked about last time.
I can't remember. I might have recommended Sneakers because I did watch
Oh, you
that,
did
and that was a
recommend
good movie.
Sneakers.
Oh,
I'm going to recommend that again because I have a feeling neither of you watched
No.
it, and I really need both
How
of
do
you to
not
watch it.
in the next week? Jeez.
I'm sorry, a full 7 days passed. I thought maybe. You never know.
I'm sorry, but my local university theater is showing Barbie tomorrow. That's pretty much all I care about.
I'm not going to be seeing Barbie or Oppenheimer or Barbenheimer, both of them together for a hot minute. I'm going home this weekend. Zach and Sarah, you guys are both busy this weekend.
Shadow Man. That was the movie we watched last
Shadow
week.
Man.
Sneakers.
Shadow.
I always think of
Not
Dark
the
Man.
Shadow Man.
And that's a totally different movie.
Yeah, I'm actually really upset with myself that when we were talking about Shadow Man and he asked for my recommendation, I couldn't like think of what to say. I had to like ask Sarah, and we started talking about Terminator 2 and Titanic and stuff. I should have just recommended Dark Man. Like literally, I was like, you know, when you say something like, you know, dumb, you put the shoe in, you know, your foot in your mouth, and like later that day you like regret it. This is a very low stakes version of that, but I'm laying in bed and I'm like, oh, I should have said Dark Man. So I could talk about how Dark Man and Shadow Man have similar titles, but Dark Man's better. Why didn't I say Dark Man? I wanted to say Sam Raimi's Dark Man, but I didn't think of it till it was too late.
Yeah.
Or just any of the episodes, if it's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, that reference like Dayman and Nightman.
You got to watch the play.
Yeah,
The Nightman Cometh.
Nightman Cometh. Yeah, watch Nightman Cometh instead of Shadow Man.
Season 4, episode 13.
Wow.
Thank you, Hans.
Thanks.
Did you have that off the top of the...
No, I had to look it up.
Oh, okay.
Was that off the dome?
But I had it ready because I knew it was coming.
Well, look at you. Real professional.
What do we?
Any other thoughts on Attack
See,
Force?
I get it right sometimes.
Sometimes. Any other thoughts on Harvester, subtitle, Attack Force?
I really wish it were still Harvester. That's my only thought.
I want to watch,
Yeah.
please.
I would rather watch
We got
Harvester.
the Snyder cut. Give us the Harvester cut.
Yeah.
If someone out there has access to the original cut of this movie somehow, somewhere, please, we need
If you
it.
just have the raw files, get them to me. I will assemble. the movie.
Here's my dream. I have one dream. I want to get some people.
Only one?
Well, I have a lot of dreams, but in relation to this podcast, I really want to get anyone we can get, who worked on one of these movies. I have so many questions. I want to do an interview episode with just anyone who
Don't
worked
dreams say dreams. We got to make this
on
happen.
these
I'm sure we can find
movies.
someone.
Sound department, cinematography, an actor. I don't care.
Could have been an assistant in the background.
Yeah.
Just anyone who had on-set experience
a grip,
with Seagal,
a best
with
boy.
the man himself.
I don't know, like, if you arrange the snack table, I don't care. Like, craft services, come talk to me, please.
I feel like we can make that happen. That's our next big push.
Yeah, by episode 50.
That's what really elevates this
That would be
podcast to the next
pretty
tier.
excellent.
Yeah.
That's what makes us, McElroy like level of podcasting.
Well, I don't know about that.
We're coming for you, McElroy.
Well, I think we have. I think last time I checked, we have like a total of 14 unique listeners, something like that, and they're all our friends. So
it's a living.
It's a living,
it's
it's not.
So that was Attack Force.
How do we close this one?
More like Attack Farce.
Attack
Farce.
Attack Farce.
More like
Attack Force. More like Attack Fart.
Hey, there you go. More like Harvester. Actually, that's what it should have been.
That means one of us has to die.
Okay, so I'm gonna throw a curveball here. We talked about Underworld came out like 3 years before, and like Blade Trinity came out like 2 years before, or whatever.
Yeah.
Gonna throw a little curveball here. Something I don't even know how this affected the movie, but I'm gonna pause it. Maybe affected the movie. The first Twilight novel came out in 2005.
Oh my gosh!
There was just too much hype about?
Doesn't it all just click into place when I say that? The red yarn is pinned on the wall. We are connecting photos and newspaper
You cracked
articles.
the code.
I cracked the Da Vinci Code of the vampire movie that wasn't a vampire movie.
Oh my gosh, you solved the cryptogram.
I sent the encryption with all the gory details. I put the CTX in the water supply. I am the mastermind. I am the admiral.
I am Dark Man.
I am Dark Man.